Hi everyone, Melissa here. Today's guest is Abhi Pardeshi, who graduated from Owen in 2011 and has since built an impressive career working with companies such as DaVita, VieMed Healthcare Group, and currently UHS. In our conversation, Abhi shares the experiences and lessons that have shaped his career style, from the importance of authenticity in leadership to the necessity of continuous improvement. He emphasizes that leadership is not a static skill, but an evolving one, requiring consistent effort and self-reflection. Abhi also offers some great advice on how to build trust with your team and stay true to yourself in the process. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Bortkiewicz. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I am one of the podcast hosts for Owen's LDP 1000 Ways to Lead. I am here with Abhi Pardeshi, and we will be talking about his leadership. He is a Vandy Owen alum, and we are really excited to have him here. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making time for us. We really appreciate it. So to get started and to give our viewers a lay of the land, can you tell us about where you've been since graduating Owen and where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated Owen in 2011. While I was at Owen, I had an internship with DaVita. And so my first role, once I graduated, was with DaVita through their Redwoods Leadership Development Program. I started off running a facility in Kentucky, and then I moved into a IT role where I supported our kind of larger IT initiatives. And really, a lot of my role was kind of hopping around to different positions when there'd be an opening or a vacancy at the director VP level within DaVita. And I would help kind of right-size that team, support them, and find my replacement. I did that for a couple of years and realized that my passion was more in that people leadership, people management. And so I moved over into operations and worked in hospital services at DaVita for a number of years. While I was doing that, I was very much a road warrior at DaVita, and I realized I just wanted to be home a little bit more. And so at that point, I transitioned into anesthesia and worked in the Nashville greater area for a company called AMG or VieMed. There I managed anesthesiologists and CRNAs across the greater Nashville area and parts of Kentucky. Did that for a number of years, really focused on operations, working with hospital leadership and hospital systems, and managing kind of ORs. From there, I had an opportunity to go to Forefront Telecare, where I led their operations and strategy. Timing of that one really worked out well for me. At the time, my mom was dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia, and Forefront was a behavioral telehealth organization, and I thought those kind of really aligned my personal and professional goals and jumped into it. I had the opportunity there to grow that business quite substantially over about 2.5 years until we were sold, and now currently I'm at UHS. At UHS, I run our telehealth and digital platform for our behavioral health division, and I've been here now 3 years.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, as somebody who is now concentrating in healthcare, it's really interesting to see the span of experience you've had over the course of your career and where each step has taken. I know that when we had met initially that you had mentioned while working at DaVita that your boss had recognized your leadership potential very early on. So what did he see in you that maybe you hadn't recognized yet? How did he hone in on that to make you with that transformation in leadership?
Yeah, I think it started off with some of the more kind of technical skills. With my engineering background, he saw that I was a really good problem solver, and one of those skills I think that he appreciated that I had was that ability to take something complicated and translate it into something actionable and able to digest for the larger team. And I think that was kind of the start of it, is I could get thrown into any project. If it was complicated or not, I could kind of break it down into its pieces and then share that with the larger team and really create an action plan on how to address it. I think once that started, I think what he kind of leaned on for me is that I really do lead by example. And I would just get in and get my hands dirty and start working on a project. And I wouldn't just kind of ask my larger team to work on something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And I think that really got me to have that buy-in with the teams that I would join, helped me to gain that trust with them, that I was willing to do everything with them, and really allowed me to transition those teams quickly just because I was able to jump in and get right in there and build that trust.
Yeah, I feel like building trust is so important and integral, especially when it comes to strong leadership. because you're somebody who has led teams that have spanned from a few people to hundreds across states, how have you learned to lead through that distance and scale?
It's kind of two pieces. I think there's the team component of it. And so, with the team, for me, it's really about getting to know people, understanding what they want, what their goals and desires are for at work and personally, and then building a model and an environment that we can support that and help people grow. But I think on the other side of that, there's the organizational pieces of it, which have clear objectives, have a clear goal and strategy, and then make sure that the team understands how they're impacting that goal, how they're impacting that strategy with the work they do. And so it allows, at distance and with large teams, people can make some decisions on their own because they know what the overall direction is. And the more you can enable that and help that, the more people will feel fulfilled and be able to kind of work autonomously a bit more.
For current Vandy students, for current Owen students, and also even alum, what are some ways in which you get to learn the people that you work with? Like, how do you create those connections?
Some of it is structured. And so I do, with direct reports, I have weekly check-ins. We have on a weekly basis, I'll have meetings where we go over our current work. What did you do last week? What are you doing next week? I always dedicate some of that time for personal, professional development. What are you working on outside of work? How can I help? Is there anything that we can do that way? And then I also have that as an ability for me to gather that info for myself. What am I doing well for you? What am I not doing well? What would you like to see me do more of? How can I help? And I think that dynamic, that very open-ended conversation, but structured, allows the team to really feel supported by me, but also feel like they've got the ability to make some decisions and do their own, kind of do things on their own in their own way. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part of it is kind of just honestly just truly showing interest, right? And making sure you dedicate that time and show that you care what's going on.
Yeah. And I think that's important, like the balance between being authentic, but also being structured as a leader and making time and space to get to know people, I think really pays itself in dividends. When it comes, and I feel like in part to be successful in this arena, there's also like this idea of professional development. And I feel like you've been very intentional with that. Like, how do you identify and nurture potential in your team members?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that kind of setting up an individual development plan, right? So for everybody on my team, we set up individual development plans that has a mix between what do you want to accomplish at work, for work tasks, what do you want to accomplish professionally? And so some of those things might be, more exposure to public speaking or more exposure to finance, right? Those could be like professional goals. And then some of it is personal goals. And so that can vary from everything from if it's a heavy travel role, I want to be home X amount of nights a month, or it might be I want to be more active. So if I can take some calls while I'm walking around, that'd be great, right? There's such a mix that can go into there. But I think a lot of those little things make a difference because you can say professional development means I'm going to take X amount of courses or go to so many conferences, right? And that's kind of like a block in time or a lot of dedicated time. So I think it's balancing the two, right? It's what are some things that are going to be very time consuming that you really have to dedicate some structure and process to? And then what are some things that are smaller that we just kind of make sure you're doing every day a little bit? And that might be going for a walk, or that might be, sitting in on a call here and there that have, talk about finance, for example, in that scenario I just said. So I think those are the kind of buckets that I try to cater towards for my team. And then I try to do for myself, and I'll talk to my boss and say the same thing. Hey, I'd love to get more exposure to this. When you have that call coming up, can I join?
How do you find time to do this? How do you structure this into your day?
I think, it varies, right? There's weeks that I get none of that done, and that's okay. But I'm a very reliant on my calendar type person. And what I will do is I block time on my calendar that is, color coded as flexible time. And I have flexible time throughout my week that is dedicated to different tasks. So some of it might be, professional development. Some of it might be some personal development. Some of it might be get up and go for a walk, right? But I put it on my calendar. And if I can't do it, my kind of personal rule is I just move it to the next day or I move it to later. And if you move something a couple of times, you're like, okay, I've moved this too many times. I have to do it today. And so that's a little bit of how I work. Is it perfect? No, not at all. Is there something that I could probably do better? Sure. But it's a good balance for me that when something urgent comes up or I have to have that time to keep working on something, it's not the end of the world. But if I move it too many times, I kind of like say, all right, I moved that too many times. I need to be more intentional today.
I love that. As somebody who is in their second year, I feel like I've done that for some things. And there comes a point where it's like, okay, today is the day we do it. So I feel like for our listeners, especially those in their first or second year, I feel like this is really invaluable advice. And I feel like that structure is super helpful for the productivity for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's pretty common, but I find it more and more true nowadays, but I'm sure everyone knows this, but, pick the hard stuff and do it first. I used to put it off more and then it really gets pushed the next day. And if you just knock it out, it's like, it makes your day that much easier. Right. So, I'm sure everyone that like you talk to will have said, I've heard that before, but actually doing that is hard.
Mm-hmm. It's that implementation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So reflecting back since graduating Owen, what are some big changes, whether they were intentional or not, that you have made to like be here that you feel, you wish you had made sooner or yeah.
I don't know what I could say I wish I made sooner just because, part of where I am today is learning the things I learned when I learned them, right? And so I don't take that away or say that's good or bad. I was thinking about this and I had one example that came to my mind that I wanted to share. And it was right after Owen and I was leading a team at DaVita. And I remember I was on a phone call in the morning and I walked into a clinic and I walked right past the team because I was on the phone and went to my office and sat down because I was just so focused on the task that was at hand. And a little bit later in the day, I had two different people from the team come into my office and ask me if I was mad at them. And I realized that it was like, it's less about what I'm doing. It's more about like how, everything that you do as a leader is kind of viewed by the team. And if you're not being thoughtful or intentional about it, in the absence of information, it can be assumed to be negative, right? And so that was like a moment that I realized I have to be very thoughtful and intentional. And, that team may or may not be looking up to me or at least they see me as their boss and like my opinion of them matters. And, a simple gesture where I come in every day and I say hi and one day I didn't, it just changed the vibe of the team like immediately, right? Because I didn't do that. And so it was little things like that I realized, like being thoughtful, being intentional, and then realizing that your actions, even though you may or may not have meant anything by it, can have a negative consequence. And so I've tried very hard to be thoughtful about like, how can this be perceived if I forget to say hi or, little things like walking in and being on a phone call and then not circling back to the team after I'm done with my call and and just greeting everybody. Right. So I think that was a big one for me that I learned early that I don't think I had the exposure prior to Owen to have learned.
I think that's really impactful. And I think that speaks a lot about your leadership and the aura you're bringing to the team and to the room, because particularly what stuck out to me most is that they felt comfortable enough to approach you and ask you, like, are you mad at me? I think that's big.
That says a lot. I appreciate you thinking about it that way. That's insightful.
So looking at the big picture of your career, you've worked across several sectors, but the theme seems to be healthcare. What makes you, or what continues to keep you so passionate about the industry?
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's really important that I feel like that I feel fulfilled in what I do. And I think a part of that fulfillment for me is that I'm helping other people and doing good. And so in my kind of pre-Owen life, I worked in litigation for a little bit and I didn't feel very fulfilled because, you can view that as just helping people sue each other. And then before that, I worked in defense, and in the same idea, like defense, there's a lot of valuable, good things that you can do at defense. And then there's a lot of part of it that you're kind of supporting warfare. And so, both of those just didn't feel great for me. And that doesn't mean they're right or wrong. That just was my personal take on it. And so I think that's what's driven me to healthcare, is that I want to feel that I'm helping people, I'm doing good. And I try to do that in organizations and in industries within healthcare that, you're really trying to help people and extend their health, extend their lives, provide good care. And so for me, as I think about that, it's a lot about, am I doing that every day? And now what I also care about as part of that is am I learning? Am I, continuing to get better? And am I having fun doing it with people people I enjoy working with, right? And I think those three things really are part of that fulfillment. I think the second two there, you can find in a lot of industries, but the ability to help people is hard to find outside of healthcare sometimes. So.
Yeah, that also resonates with me as somebody who was in education before Owen and then had, just you've been here of the experience of like, well, what do you want to focus on when you leave? And something that I also value is being able to help people. And I feel like healthcare is one of those fields where you can do that, make impact. And yeah, I don't think that there's only so many fields or industries in which you can do that. So I'm very excited about that. And I understand why you have been in the space for so long.
Yeah. And I think, education is another great one that you can do that really well. So it's pretty cool for you to be doing both.
Yeah. So this is more like looking into the future or impact in the sense of like the industry and what you've seen as a leader or how this may impact you in the role of leadership. But with technology and AI changing, healthcare so rapidly, what do you see as like the biggest opportunity, the biggest risk for leaders in the next 5 years?
I think I'll start with the risk one because that's probably what I think about more. And for me, the risk, it's kind of core to what people do today. And I think we're going to lose, or the teams that you lead or yourself is going to lose that ability to critically think and problem solve, right? If you become so reliant on technology or so reliant on a tool, are you still going to have that same ability to challenge the norm, to think differently, to push back, and to like be creative? And I can see, in some ways, like helping me write an email better or helping me perform a task is great and gives time back, right? But when that's used to do the task, that's when it starts to get to like, well, are people still going to be able to think and have to think? And I don't know how much that's going to happen in work tomorrow, but I think as time goes on and people become more and more dependent on tools, that kind of just be the ability to have problem solving and critical thinking will get to be more and more challenging. But what I'm excited about is, there's so many things today that, we work at so hard to find a optimal solution, and it's only so optimal because we only have so much horsepower and ability to figure that out. And you can give AI the data and the information and run through iteration and iteration of it. We can really start optimizing some processes and workflows and get time back. And in the healthcare world, right, time back means providers spend more time with patients. More data is reviewed to see similarities or differences to get a better judgment. Like those things are going to be great when they're vetted and proven out and can work efficiently. And I think about how much time, a doctor spends charting versus with patient care. And if we can minimize that and get more patient care time, that's a good thing. But I worry that on the operational and administrative side, people don't think as much as they need to.
Yeah, I feel like that's top of mind for a lot of people and a lot of leaders especially. I feel like there's a balance that exists. And I think that as we're kind of reaching this point in which there's AI and everything and it's everywhere, it's like, well, what is the balance that makes the most sense so that people are still that human touch that's there and people don't lose sight of what they've brought to the table and kind of like to meld the two in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah. And I've done quite a bit of like those, AI courses, and a lot of the Vandy courses are out there. And I think Vanderbilt says it well, and it's like it's more about art instead of it being artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence, right? And it's how do you augment what you're thinking versus creating its own. And if you can think of it that way, I think it's very useful.
So as we're coming to a close for this podcast, wanted to just end with a few questions of leadership in general. So what's one trait that you believe every leader should develop early? And thinking about that most of our listeners are alumni, but also current students here at Owen and prospective students.
For me, what served me well is be your authentic self, right? I think your teams around you, they quickly know if you're not being you. And that doesn't mean, leadership is a skill, and that means in any skill you have to work on and you always make better and you're always kind of trying to improve, right? So I think if you can figure out how to be a good leader and be yourself, I think that goes a lot further than saying, pick this one skill and do really well at that, or learn this or learn that. And so, to me, that's my answer. I've seen multiple types of leaders. I've had leaders who had military backgrounds and have a very military, like structured, regimented leadership style, and they've been great leaders. And then I've had leaders that are much more casual and laid back, and they've also been great leaders, but I think they've both been great because that's who they are. And so I think that would be my kind of feedback is don't be someone else, be you, but lean into it and see how you can best utilize your skills to lead better.
Do you feel like that idea of like being true to yourself and using those skills, do you feel like that helped you realize that you yourself are a strong leader? Like, this is what I bring to the table and this is how I present myself and this is what makes me a strong leader?
I think so. As I said, I think leadership's a skill, so you're always working at it. And I like to think I'm a good leader, but I know that there's way better leaders out there. And so I think that the fact that I am always trying to be better at it and asking my team for feedback on how I'm doing and what I can do better, I think that is who I am. And I think that translates into, I think, doing a good job. But I appreciate that you think I'm a good leader. So that's always a nice start.
Yeah. I mean, look, I genuinely think good leaders, great leaders, strong leaders, those are people who are very reflective and take feedback from their team. My favorite leaders are people who have done that. It's worked wonders in how the team operates.
Agree. Yeah. And I think if you're willing to do it, the team's willing to do it. Right.
Yes.
And if you're reflective and you can say that you've done something wrong and how you're going to work on making it better, then the team's not afraid to do the same thing. And I think that goes a long way.
I agree. For the final question, do you have any recommendations, books, podcasts, websites, anything that current students, prospective students, alumni should think about reading or looking into that you yourself have found helpful to refine your skill of leadership?
I'm not sure I have any here, go check this out. And I think from a standpoint of reading, I think there's so much material out there and I rotate through different books and there's always a nugget here or a nugget there that you can take away pretty quickly. So I think it's more about just continuing to learn and continuing to keep yourself open-minded. I think especially for students, one thing I would say is, take classes that you don't think you're going to like because you never know what nugget you'll get out of that class that you're like, ooh, actually, I do like this. Or I don't like this, but I took a couple of nuggets that will apply to things I do like. Right. And that's a great, Owen School is a great environment to test those things out on. And you're not going to get those chances again the same way. So I think that would be kind of my feedback is just don't stop learning.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, especially because sometimes we can get too comfortable or there's fear that's involved of stepping outside of our comfort zone. And I think one of the things that make somebody a great leader is being able to step outside of their comfort zone.
No, I agree. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Abhi. I really appreciate you being here today.
No, thank you so much. I appreciated it. And I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for today.